Hey guys, it's me, it's Queen Offset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. All right, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, pass it on to somebody else who may like it as well, and please drop me a positive comment in the comment section. So, today I want to talk about something that I thought about a couple months ago, but didn't do the video for. I just put it on the list because I thought it needed further research. When something needs further research, I just put it on the list. People often give me topics and they're like, I gave this topic months ago. Why haven't you done it? Because I'm still researching it. It's usually something I wasn't familiar with, or I might have been a little familiar with. And I don't want to come out here and talk out my ass about something that there's research on. So I'm researching a lot of things that people have said to me. Some things I've been researching for a while. I only have time here and there to read something about it. So whenever I come across it, I read it. So this one has been on the list for a couple of weeks, I'm thinking, because I was talking about this with a friend. And then the other day, somebody mentioned it to me, and I was like, oh my God, it's time. It's time for me to talk about this. And she said, devotion. She said, what role does devotion play in our society, particularly in our romantic relationships? So the first thing I said was, I got to get a definition. I need a working definition because I know what devotion is. If you're a priest or a priestess, you know devotion. Because if you're serious about the vows that you took, if you're serious about your initiation, you are devoted to your goddess or whatever energy, your god or whatever energy you're working with. You're devoted to that energy. And devotion isn't just obedience, it's obedience, but it's also love. So I wanted to give you guys a good definition to kind of understand what that means, you know. Now, when it's God or goddess, there's an obedience to it, a strong obedience to it now that I think about it. But when it's a person, it's a little bit different. So I wanted to talk about this and see, you know, if we can. It means a lot to me. As I started to read it, I was like, I feel this so deeply. I feel like I've always wanted to be devoted to another person. I'm devoted to my child. I'm devoted to myself. I'm devoted to my goddess. But I feel like I've always wanted to be devoted to a partner. And when I started to research this, that's when I realized that. I've always questioned that. And when I started to research this, I started to feel it inside of me. And I was like, wow, that's always been there. So why hasn't it occurred? And I figured that out too. So let's talk about the definition and then we're going to break this down. The definition says, I'm going to read it from the monitor, okay? Devotion means that you are not only committed to something, someone, someplace, some idea, but you also love that something and frequently invest much time, money, effort. I'm gonna add energy into the commitment. Devotion is to a human is the most frequent type. But you can also be devoted to a cause, a religion, an organization. So let's get into that. The first part talked about being committed and loving something. Now, I talked about goddess because that's what I usually see it. Where do I still see devotion in our society? I see it with some people who are spiritual leaders, unfortunately, not all. I see it with families sometimes. Some children are very devoted to their parents. Some parents are very devoted to their kids. You know, I see that a lot. I see a lot of that, and I'm talking about true devotion in this sense. Because some people think they're devoted, but they're really just codependent. And there's a difference. Because when you are codependent, there's a negativity to it. There's a stagnation. Both people are not growing. They're just kind of like, leaning on each other. And when there is a devotion, there's a love, and there is, like it says, a commitment. An effort is put into the relationship. An effort is put into cultivating each other and helping each other and being there for each other. So the difference in the two is astronomical. But in our culture, things like that often get misconstrued. We don't see a lot of devotion. We don't see a lot of compassion. We don't see a lot of these things. I mean, we do see them. I mean, I see them every day, but we don't see them as much as we see some other things, such as people being apathetic. We see a lot more apathy. I mean, think about what you see online as a representative sample of what's out there in the world. So you see some good things, you see some people posting positive stuff, you see some compassion, you see some sacrifice, you see some devotion. We see some of that. And then you see some negativity, you see some trolling, we see some violence, some attitudes, some yelling in caps. We see a little combination of both. And depending upon what your circle is like, you might have more of one than the other. Like, I see more positivity than negativity on my social media. So we do see these things, but we just don't see them, as often as I think we should. So when she talked about having devotion to a lover, what came up for me is the fact, and this is like what I remember I said I figured out why I never actually did it before. I feel like the reason how come it's different with a lover than it is with a child or with God is because with a lover, devotion has to be mutual. With a child, devotion isn't really mutual at first. Your child is just dependent on you, When they come out your womb, they're dependent, So it's not really a mutual thing, but your devotion is there because this is a being that you brought into the world. So your devotion is there, your love is there, your commitment, your time, your energy, your focus, your love for a lot of us is there immediately just because they are your child. And as your child, over time, they may or may not develop that devotion in return, depending on a number of factors. But with a romantic relationship, it has to be mutual. Both people have to decide to devote themselves in this way. And in our culture, so many people are afraid. Like, for me, I don't think it's really been fear. For me, it's been not having that other end. My devotion is there. I'm willing to be devoted to the other person, but I've never met somebody that we were both willing to be devoted to each other at the same time. Either I was devoted or they were devoted or neither one of us was devoted. And so it never really went anywhere. Even if some love was there, it never reached devotion. It never reached that level. To me, devotion is a higher level of love because the love is the base, but the devotion is the commitment to the love. So now we're taking this a whole, step higher. And for me, I've never had that combination at the same time. So I've never been willing, because it wasn't there, So I think that devotion does have a place in our society. I think some people are truly in devoted relationships, romantic relationships and other kinds. I think they really are. I think there are situations where both people are devoted to each other, but it's just not the norm that you see every day. I think it's rare. I really do. Even like when I was talking about devotion to your God or devotion to yourself, I think that's rare. I really think that it is something that is beautiful. It is something that is sacred. And I look to the Hindu culture for devotion, reading about devotion, literature on devotion. Because a long time ago, I discovered the Hindu culture and the gods and goddesses and the mythologies. And I just thought it was such a beautiful culture. And that was one of the most beautiful aspects, their commitment to devotion. And it comes when you look at the stories between Shiva and Lord Ganesha and Parvati. Hope I said her name right, because I always struggle with her name. She was the wife of Shiva. And when you look at their relationships, you see this devotion. You see the love. You see the commitment. You see, the effort being put into it. And so it's amazingly beautiful to me. And then later on, I want to read one more thing to you. I found some of the traditional wedding vows of this particular culture. And I thought that they really just screamed devotion. Let me read this one to you. This one, really touches me in the feels. It says, let us take, and there's 7 steps here. I'm going to do the last 2 because these are the ones that really hit me. Let us take the 6th step for restraint and longevity. Finally, let us take the 7th step and be true companions and remain lifelong partners by this wedlock. That hit me. I felt like somebody just punched me in my heart. And I feel like listening to that level of devotion, so it's not only the self-restraint and the longevity, which for me is the fidelity, staying true to the relationship and letting it last and, really committing our energy to it. And then the last part, committing to being lifelong partners. It's very similar to wedding vows from other cultures, but I just love the way that they put it. I think that devotion still can be, but you have to find someone who believes in it. You have to find another person who is willing to go off the cliff with you. Because to me, that's off the cliff, And a lot of people are not willing to go off the cliff. I'm willing to go off that bitch. Straight up. I'm willing to jump right off it. But I have to be with someone who is willing to do exactly the same thing. And that's why it's always been in my heart. And that's why it's never happened. One of the lines from one of my favorite movies is, "You jump, I jump." Ever since I first saw Titanic, that particular quote hit me because it speaks devotion to me. But I'm not jumping by myself. We gonna jump together or ain't nobody jumping. And that's the thing about devotion. It's not easy to find somebody that's looking at the water like, yeah, I'm jumping with you. So if I ever found someone or attracted someone that was willing to be devoted, that was willing to be committed in that way, and I was feeling the same way about them, because remember, it has to be mutual, then yeah. But for most of us, that doesn't happen. You can't be devoted to someone who's not devoted to you in a romantic relationship and think that it's going to work out. Some of the times, they will eventually become devoted over time. And sometimes they never really will. They'll just get used to you and just hang out in the relationship, but never really show up. You ever been with somebody who's hanging out, but not really showing up? It's like they hang out, y'all have sex, y'all go places, they give you gifts, but they're not really emotionally, mentally, spiritually showing up. That's devotion. That kind of person is never going to be able to be truly devoted because there's something in them that they're not mutually agreeing. And that's the bottom line. So I wanted to point that out to you guys because I feel like it was such a profound understanding. And I just wanted to say to the woman that asked the question that, yeah, it does still have a place in our society. It's not a relic. It doesn't belong in the museum. It is something that you generally see in relationships, like I said, that are family, or that are in some kind of way in devotion to God or goddess. But it doesn't have to be that way. A good marriage, a good marriage should have devotion. And again, mutual devotion. And a lot of them fall apart because they don't. So I just wanted to put that out there for you to think about going into 2020. Who's devoted to you and who are you devoted to? And if that's not mutual, consider what it is that you're doing. Because basically, you're wasting your time. All right, guys, it's time for me to get going. So I'm going to talk to you guys later. I have a lot more to say, so come back next year. Happy New Year, guys. See you later.